So barely 60 days before an election, liberals promise another $1 billion of your money to CBC to give the corporation extra incentive to campaign day and night to re-elect the liberal government to a fourth term. Well, they know what side their bread is buttered on. A reminder to believe nothing you see or hear on CBC. Well, that's it now. So there's a liberal minister coming out and wanting to double the money from 1.4 or almost double it from 1.4 billion. Here we go. So just a reminder from Antonio Tweets here. So we have a former CBC journalist here who is, this is from 2023, saying that the CBC betrayed the public. Let's hear what she has to say.
We betrayed the public. We broke their trust. And we had been riding on a reputation of excellence for years. And now we were quickly shutting down one side of the debate. And how were we doing that? We branded the doctors and the experts the CBC chose that we used in our stories. We branded them as competent and trustworthy. And those who questioned and challenged the narrative were portrayed as dangerous and spreading disinformation. And that was regardless of what their specialty was, what their background was, and what their experience was. And I just also want to sort of give you a window into how this affected me personally. As a veteran journalist, I had solid contacts in the community. I had people calling me with stories. So I was seeing and I was hearing and I was absorbing all their stories of suffering and pain, and they were sharing them with me, and these stories weren't being told. Some of those were from the vaccine injured. Some were from people who had lost their job because of their vaccination status, those whose families had been blown apart and they'd been ostracized, university students who were depressed over repeated lockdowns and mandates, and parents who were calling me that were agonizing on whether they should vaccinate their child or not. So all these stories were sitting inside of me, they were left with me, and I felt the crushing burden and the weight of their truth not being given a voice. And it affected my well-being because these people trusted me, and I felt I had failed them and I had let them down. It was like I had failed these people as a journalist to give voice to their truth. So I had witnessed in a very short time the collapse of journalism, news gathering, investigative reporting, and the way I saw it is that we were in fact pushing propaganda. And to define propaganda, it's information, ideas, opinions, or images that give one part of an argument, which are broadcast, published, in order to influence a person's opinion. And mental health workers have their own definition of propaganda as manipulative persuasion in the service of an agenda.
First off, this is why CBC should not get a penny in tax dollars. Pierre Poilievre needs to follow through on his promise to totally defund the CBC, completely defund it, okay? This argument that it's an important Canadian institution to inform the people of Canada, well, that's gone. That's obviously not true, right? That's not its purpose anymore, right? Its purpose now is to bolster establishment views and establishment narratives. That's it. It seems to also just have been completely parasitized by the woke mind virus, which is not popular or representative of the Canadian people. It's not representing the Canadian people. It's not serving the Canadian people. It's serving another master. This is why the CBC, when it's asking for more money, should get no. This is why the CBC, when it wants any money, should get no. No, you get nothing. You get absolutely nothing. You refuse to meet us even halfway. You refuse to take one step in our direction, the direction of the Canadian people, towards ethical, responsible journalism. You refused. Now you get nothing. We're just saying no. You're beyond repair. And it makes me sad because I have fond memories of the CBC growing up being a kid, but it's now beyond repair. And the people running it are beyond hope, right? They're just ideologues now who do hate, at the very least, millions and millions of Canadians, right? They certainly don't represent any conservative in Canada. Never mind Christians or just anybody who disagrees with them on anybody. They represent a
small fringe minority.
And when we talk about sciencism, this is what we're talking about, right? The experts that will say, that will repeat the already predetermined narrative that the CBC has come up with, has decided upon, right? And then demonizing all those who won't back up their already predetermined narrative as set by the Trudeau Liberals. No, you refused to be civil, to even just be civil. No, now you get nothing. Comey gets nothing. So from Juno News, this the heritage minister wants to actually permanently fund the CBC. Let's take a look here.
The existence of our public broadcaster depends on a single line in the budget. I'm proposing that we remove the decision making around funding from the political cycles, whether it's the elections or the budget. Many countries around the world have chosen that path in giving their public broadcaster predictable, viable, and stable funding. CBC does not belong to the Liberals, it does not belong to the Conservatives, and it does not belong to any other political parties. It belongs to the Canadian people. And this
does not belong to the Liberals. Walks like a duck, quacks like a duck. Anyway, continue.
This is why, to be able to give CBC Radio-Canada the means to fulfill its mandate, I propose that it be financed directly in the legislation instead of in the budget through statutory appropriation.
So she wants to preserve her little propaganda arm of the Liberal Party by just making its funding legally permanent. Right? So transparent. They're so scared of losing that their most reliable propaganda arm. So here we go. So he's the head of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Let's hear what he has to say.
So the CBC is already costing taxpayers $1.4 billion every single year. And what the minister's proposing would mean that cost would jump up to about $2.5 billion a year, almost $2.5 billion hit to taxpayers every single year for the CBC. Let's just put that huge cost into perspective, right? That amount of money would cover the grocery bill of about 150,000 families. So this government is so tone deaf. After all of the criticism Canadians have brought forward against the CBC, what's the government's plan? The government's plan is to nearly double the cost of the CBC to taxpayers.
The Canadian Taxpayers Federation is instead calling for the CBC to be completely defunded.
Yes, please. Completely defunded. It has, I think, about a 4% market share in Canada. Nobody watches it other than
small fringe minority.
Yeah, it's not even serving any purpose anymore. It's not even really that useful even as a propaganda arm anymore, because nobody watches it or pays attention to it, because it's garbage, because it's ideological, because it's woke. Here, CBC radio morning host. Question: have we decided that we're taking back the Canadian flag from the convoy types? Is it okay to fly a Canadian flag again without being mistaken for, those guys? Yes. Fuck you. Defunded. We tried to be reasonable. But you just couldn't. You just couldn't. You couldn't help but be arrogant ideologues. So no. Now there's no sympathy. Now there's no mercy. We're going to destroy the thing that you love. We're going to defund it. And you don't get to have it anymore. You don't get to have state propaganda anymore. And we don't care if you're sad. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that. Please like, share, and subscribe. Subscribing really helps me out. I thank you for that. I will see you next time.